In this exercise, we're going to go over some simple functions that you can input into Google Sheets, functions and formulas rather. So for the first part, I would like you to um, fill in a spreadsheet like this. Um, have the overhead costs of, we're going to be looking at a made-up company that has 5 different clients. Their material costs and labor costs are, these are all costs to the company, expenses to the company. So, and then we are going to calculate what their price should be for their products that we create for them based on a profit margin, a percentage. So, so yeah. So the first thing you need to do is to create the spreadsheet, right? So you're going to be typing in these, and then to bold text, you can actually highlight the cells and then click on this bold um, button. And you can do the same thing over here with all of these. Click on bold. I put the client's names all italicized, and then I added, and that's italics is right next to bold, and then I added some color. So I highlighted what I wanted to color, and then you just go into here and you can add some color to your cells. Once you have the color, you're going to have to format these cells to be currency. So to format those to be currency, you're going to highlight them and then actually click on the format as currency. You can see if you make it as a percent, they'll jump over to percentages. Currency will jump over to dollars. So that's the easy way to sort of fix some of these. So now we're going to go into summing up columns. So to sum up a column, you need to click on the typically you click on the cell that's underneath the column, and it can be like a couple cells underneath. I'm just going to keep it close, so keep it up here, and then I'm going to click on the equal sign, and then notice how it already pops up sum and average because those are very commonly used, but we're not going to click on those quite yet. So type in sum, S-U-M, open a parenthesis, and then you're gonna click and drag the range that you want to include into your sum, and then you're gonna close the parenthesis, hit enter, and then that sum is there for all of these. Like your overhead costs turn out to be $8,410. So we can assume that this is for a month. Maybe these are monthly totals. So the next thing you're going to do is do the same thing for these two columns. We're going to get the sum of the material cost and sum of the labor cost. So equals sum, and again we're just going to go up to the top. Hold, if you're doing it on your keyboard, you're just going to hold shift and then arrow key down and then close it. But you can do it with your mouse too, either way. And another equals sum, and you can actually type in the series that you want. So the first cell in the labor cost that you're going to sum up is G3, and that goes all the way down to G7. So I just showed you 3 different ways to input the data, but I'm sure there's more. So so yeah, there's multiple ways to do things within this program. So now we have the overhead costs summed up, we have our material costs summed up, and we have our labor costs summed up. So I want to get a total cost, and so you might be asking yourself, why don't you just add these costs up individually, right? Like I got a calculator, I can do that. Easy enough. I'll just add these up individually, add the actual numbers. Because if you use the cells, if you use variables, then these things can actually change. You can because one month might change from another, right? Your utility costs might go up next month, or they might go down next month. And if you key in a cost adjustment, so maybe you have a savings and it goes down to 750. So then that'll reflect in your total because you're using variables. You're not using the actual number from the month. So that's why it's a nice thing to have. That's why you use variables rather than actual numbers all the time. So okay, so now for total cost, you're going to set this equal to the three individual cells that are the sum. So it's going to be C8, and then you're going to do plus F8 plus G8. And this is your total cost. So now to calculate a client price, right? This the client price, you have to take into account your material cost, your labor costs, and your overhead costs. So I'm sure that there's a lot of different ways that a real company would calculate these costs. I'm just going to do something very simple and basic. Um, I'm actually I'm actually going to we're going to use just a generic sort of profit margin. So the profit margin for a high profit margin um, for big companies, it's probably around 20%. And to make sure that this is actually in percent, so we're gonna we're gonna type in point 0.2, and then when we're highlighting this profit margin, we're gonna go over to format as percent. So now when we multiply this into things, or when we use this in math and formulas, it's actually going to act as a percent. So if we multiply 20% into our total cost, we'll get 20% of that total cost. So yeah. So the next thing we have to decide is our client pricing, right? So or the profit, right? So we'll decide on the profit first by using this profit margin. So we're going to just split the overhead costs evenly between our five clients. Now that probably would not happen in the real world, right? You're not going to take, so say you have a customer that does um, does very minimal, like, so GE is doing or GE has the least amount of material cost and very low labor cost. They shouldn't pay for 20% of your overhead, right? That shouldn't be factored into their cost. So it's not totally realistic, but for purposes of learning a spreadsheet, it'll work. So we're going to take this cell under profit. We're going to set that equal to the material cost, which is F3, plus the labor cost. So these are going to be within parentheses, okay? And then we're going to add the total overhead cost divided by 5. Because again, we're splitting it evenly, and that's how we're going to do it. But then the last thing we need to do to get that profit is to multiply this total by our profit margin. So whatever we input here, we need to multiply that by. So if we charged, right? So this would be the profit number. This would be the number of dollars we would get for profit. So if we charge them the material cost, the labor cost, a fifth of the overhead costs, and then added a 20% profit margin for our company, that's how much money we would charge the client in profit. So the client price is going to be material cost plus labor cost. And again, we'll put those in parentheses again. Plus a fifth of the total costs. So a fifth of the total costs plus our profit. So that's going to be the client price. So for whatever they did over for the material cost being $1,200, so $2,500 there, right? Plus the overhead, and the profit. The client's price is at around $5,000. So now we're going to do the same thing for each of these. You can systematically go through these, but I'm going to show you a quick little trick you can do. And so if I were to copy what's in this cell and move it down, right? If I were to move it down in this direction, notice that doesn't make sense, right? Why are we getting $0 here? So the reason why is because so when you copy that, it automatically copies the next row, right? It automatically copies the next row. So there's nothing underneath this profit margin. There's nothing under this overhead sum. So in order to have that right, we need the cell to stay in. We need to lock that cell. So to lock the cell, there's a code that you just punch in. So we need to lock in the code for K10, and that is a $sign. So we're actually locking in that K10, and then we're going to lock in C8 with a $sign. So now these two cells are locked in our formula. These cells we don't want to be locked, the F3 and the G3, because we want them to follow down in our table. So now when we move down, the profits are changing, right? And let's look to see if it makes sense. So is there less profit here? Yeah, there's a lot less money involved here, right? There's a lot less money involved here. So yes, it is going down. Okay, so now for the client pricing. So the client pricing, also, we need to lock in some of our cells here. And the cells that we need to lock, the only cell we need to lock is the overhead expense. So that is indeed the only cell we're going to lock in place. And then when we copy the rest of the cells down, you'll notice that they will indeed reflect what our profit gains are. So, and they make sense, right? Just a quick look at the numbers, they make sense. Your profit goes up, the client price goes up. So yeah, so we're doing the right thing here. These two are very close in numbers, and the profits are very close in numbers, so it looks good. So now we can add up our total profit. So let's see what our total profit is, and we'll add these all up. Whoops. So we need to make a sum. Open up that parenthesis, click and drag that down, and yeah. So all of these numbers are now they're inputted through a formula, right? And so the nice thing, again, the nice thing about having variables set up is you can change any of these numbers, and they will change corresponding to these formulas that you set up, right? You can change this number, and it'll affect the client price, it'll affect your profit, it'll affect your total cost, but it's not going to. But you will be able to it'll be able to reflect, and you'll be able to see it in these numbers. So if you want to change the profit margin, right? Let's say 20% is just not realistic, and your clients are saying that they're being charged too heavily, and they're not buying your product because it's just too high. So you go in and you put in a 20% profit margin. Notice all of your profits were cut in half, right? Because you're changing your profit margin to a 10%, which is half of 20. So all of the profits went down, and 10% of 14,635 is indeed 1,460. Well, this says 1,464, but it would be 64 and 50 cents. So it rounds it in that way. So yeah, so that's sort of what I'm expecting you all to produce, and that's just the basics on some formula input and profit and client pricing. So good luck with this exercise, and make sure to ask any questions if you run into issues.